Prigozhin's campaign may not be successful, but Vladimir Putin is ruined. Liar Lenin, for decades nothing happened, weeks and years passed. History came quickly this morning as Yevgeny Prigozhin's Wagnerian paramilitary forces advanced towards Moscow. This morning Prigozhin gave a public speech in the city of Rostov-on-Don, near the Ukrainian border. While the facts on the ground are difficult to ascertain, Wagner now appears to have taken control of the city and was promoted to the city of Voronezh. The next place to appear was Moscow, with news that an army of 72 cars was heading to the city. Prigozhin has been openly criticizing the government for some time, especially saying that during the war in Bakhmut, Ukraine, Wagnerian soldiers suffered from food shortages and used artillery. Last month, Prigozhin threatened to withdraw Wagner's troops from Bakhmut if they didn't get more ammunition, which he turned down. It seems that Prigozhin's patience with the regime has finally paid off. In his speech, Prigozhin said, "We are here, we want to welcome the Prime Minister and Shoigu, and, if they do not come, we will stay here, we will block the city of Rostov and Moscow." In response, the Kremlin declared terrorist pressure and put security forces to suppress the attack. Gave them more power. The government also announced that Prigozhin was guilty of planning a military coup. At a press conference this morning, Russian President Vladimir Putin accused his old friend of treason and said, "Those who oppose the coup betrayed Russia and will be held accountable." History shows that the struggle will fail, but it also means the end of Vladimir Putin. The uprising is undoubtedly a response to the occupation. Putin's war of imperial conquest over powerful neighbors has made Russia the most corrupt country in the world. The West has come under heavy sanctions, and the international community has been re-elected to the United Nations to condemn the intervention. The occupation had a devastating effect on Ukraine, with thousands of Ukrainian soldiers and civilians being killed indiscriminately and many cities being devastated. While Russia has not released casualty figures, Ukrainian intelligence agencies claim that more than 200,000 Russians have been killed or injured since last February, more than 10 times the number during the 1980s invasion of Afghanistan. Last year's disappointing Ukrainian counteroffensive cost Russia half the gains it had made in the early stages of its invasion, including the liberation of Kherson in November. Putin himself is being isolated. In March, the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for the Russian leader, accused of committing war crimes related to the deportation of Ukrainian children. The Russian army is also accused of targeting and killing civilians in mass graves in the city of Buta and in Ukrainian towns, hit by missiles. The timing for Ukraine could not have been better. The attack took place during the long-awaited coup d'état of Ukraine, which reportedly faced Russian aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky admitted this week that progress has been slower than expected. A divided Russia is a godsend for Ukraine, which can take full advantage of Wagner's absence and Putin's ability to dismiss the Russian military to deal with the insurgency. It doesn't make sense for the Russian military to continue killing and dying in Ukraine during internal protests. This will be when Ukraine begins to drive Russian troops out of its sovereign territory, including the Crimea. This suggests that Putin will soon have nowhere to go. Prigozhin essentially destroyed the Kremlin's justification for crimes in Ukraine, which he said were lies yesterday. As the invasion was welcomed by the international community, it undoubtedly marked the beginning of the end of Russia's aggression against Ukraine. Wagner's administration of Rostov is also a serious blow to the Putin regime, and the Russian military seems to agree. There are reports that the Russian army surrendered to Wagner's army on the way from Ukraine to Rostov and Moscow. The risk for Putin has increased. Prigozhin initially wanted to force a change in the Russian military, which he believed was inadequate, but has since responded to Putin's comments by saying that the leader made the wrong decision and that we will soon have a new president. For the former allies, this seems like a fight for life and death. If this continues, Putin will be dismissed or forced to negotiate with Prigozhin. The end result will be to embarrass the former president and tarnish his image in Russia. His reign will end. Putin said, anyone who wants to take the path of rebellion, carry out military attacks, walk the path of blackmail and terror will not be punished, and will be held accountable to the law and our people. Putin described Wagner's actions as stabbed in the back of our country and our people. The use of anti-terrorist security forces in the Moscow region and many other areas shows the seriousness of the Wagner Group insurgency. The Wagner bloc, said to be led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, captured the Russian city of Rostov-on-Don, close to the Ukrainian border. His troops were in control of military operations there. Wagner Group leader Prigozhin criticized the growing military leadership that Russia lost in the war with Ukraine. The mercenary group is fighting alongside the Russian army in Ukraine and is a force to be reckoned with. The Wagner Group consisted of thousands of soldiers, many of whom had been drafted from prisons across the country. Group Wagner suddenly provocatively entered Russia from the Ukrainian battlefield, after the Russian army allegedly carried out an airstrike on Wagner's army. However, the Russian Defense Ministry denied responsibility for the attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin described the war of the Wagner Group mercenaries as treason and promised that anyone who takes up arms against the Russian army will be punished. Vladimir Putin responded to the news of the change made by the head of Wagner PMC, Yevgeny Prigozhin, at an emergency press conference. The Russian president said he would do everything to protect Russia and take decisions to improve the situation in Rostov-on-Don. Wagnerian leader Yevgeny Prigozhin said that his troops had taken control of all military outposts in the city. The Voice of Nigeria learned that Yevgeny Prigozhin announced that he was directing troops to Russia to destroy the country's military system. He said he and his 25,000 soldiers were ready to sacrifice their lives. 62-year-old Prigozhin, in his speech after accusing Russian military leaders of attacking their soldiers, said, "We are ready to give our lives. We gave our lives to the Russians." Commander Wagner said that he was at army headquarters in the city of Rostov-on, which was on a plunder mission in the south. Airport. "We're at military headquarters," Prigozhin said in a Telegram video. Rost military headquarters in Kafka, including the airport, is under control. "We have created a crime prevention system to protect against criminals in the city of Moscow and the Moscow region of